Bro, this is the last podcast recording.
The last podcast show.
It's someday, the last podcast. People finally tire of it.
Yeah, they close down the feeds, The old lions die off and the feeds close down. That'll be the day.
That'll be the day.
Oh, boy. This is a guy, he loves John Wayne, he loves John Ford.
They're the greatest of all time, We could do a whole podcast just on John Ford, John Wayne, and their legacy and their, politics. Just good men, good, solid, traditional men. It doesn't get any better than that,
That's right. That's what this country misses the most. We're talking about the Last Picture Show. Peter Bogdanovich. You might want to go to the experts for your opinions on new Hollywood films, but some like it unauthorized, and I am Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Domes.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that people put on their lists of good movies, American classics. So I've definitely heard a lot about it, and figured we'd take a look, because neither of us have seen it before. Yeah, I'm curious how you found it, Zach.
I found it?
No, I mean, how did you find watching it?
I was like, wow. Oh wait, hold on. Before we get into that though, how was it received? Was it well received when it came out, or was it like a small selection? Yeah. No,
yeah. We'll talk about the story of the film, but it was instantly well received, and it did well. I think it was like top 10 box office for the year. Made a good 30 times its budget or something, because this was a very small budget film. But it instantly kind of announced the arrival of Peter Bogdanovich. And people were like, hey, check it out. The new kids, they know how to make movies. And this kind of hits for a young and an old audience, I think. So, the establishment liked it and the young kids liked it. And it probably came pretty close to winning Best Picture. This is the year The French Connection wins Best Picture and William Friedkin wins Best Director. But, this was kind of universally loved, I think. So it was probably running second.
Yeah. Amazing. He did just a couple things before this, right? He did some movie called Targets.
Yeah, he got into filmmaking by getting a job with Roger Corman, making those kind of low-budget B-movie type things. And after he had that under his belt, he had a one-picture deal with, I think, Universal, either Universal or Paramount, that they let expire. But he got this deal with BBS, which was the production company behind Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces, and Head, the movie about the monkeys. But these were those guys going like, yeah, you obviously know your stuff. Like, Targets was good, despite it being this, low budget job for hire kind of thing. So yeah, you want to make this little low budget film, adapt this novel by a pretty well-known novelist. This guy had already written the novel that was adapted into HUD, the Paul Newman Western. So they were like, yeah, just put some nudity in it so we can sell it, but you can make your film for sure.
Amazing. That all makes a lot of sense. Good research on that too, because having watched some of those movies now and we've been talking about this, that makes sense that it has all those connections. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah, this was quite a surprise. You go into it, at least I went into it thinking that it'd be kind of a laid back, those quirky, like a quirky film, but from the 70s. I was thinking of, the sort of run of quirky films that came out in the early 2000s, like Little Miss Sunshine and Juno and stuff like that. I was thinking this was going to be something like that, but from this era. And to some degree it is a coming-of-age story in a small town. But boy, does it get dark at times, and for sure deal with elements that, like, some directors and some movies don't even get close to even today. So I was very surprised by what it was doing and where it was going.
Yeah. I was thinking about Richard Linklater because I imagine he admired this film a lot, and he's always interested in this coming of age and the passage of time and how bittersweet that is, all those elements. And it's a Texas film that shows you, the kind of like unglamorized side of growing up in small town America, or just living in small town America, because this touches on the adults' stories as well.
Yeah, but it is important that it's set in the West, for the fact that it's it can at times hint at those Western themes that have been recurring throughout all of cinema. Obviously, even though it's adapted from a novel, setting in the West is going to give you like a kind of a blank slate to kind of write your own rules and do your own things, and that's something that it's doing. You could do that. You could do that with any setting. It's just so free and easy to do out there in the West Texas Western landscape. Yeah,
and it was a pretty autobiographical novel. They actually shoot this in the author Larry McMurtry's hometown. So, it's true to life. It's like if you live out there, grow up out there, there's, especially from probably this period, the 50s onward, there's that feeling of this was a place of promise, this open Western landscape that the United States kind of said, go do whatever you want, go follow your dreams. And now everyone's settled down and these lives are so just meaningless and just feel like they're stuck in place in this, maybe you'll strike it and get some oil, but even then, your life will be boring and kind of pointless. So there's this sense hanging over all of these lives of this was supposed to be a special place, but it feels haunted. It feels like a dead end,
Yeah, I've had the chance. I don't know if was a good chance or not, but I've had the chance to drive across Texas several times, and actually so many times that I, on one occasion, took a path kind of out of my way just to see other towns and what other off the beaten path, what other towns looked like when you got off the main highway, and it's quite sad, and you can see this film. It was probably indicating a change, a transition that was happening back then, and that has never gone back to anything resembling whatever it once was. I don't know why people made towns out in the middle of nowhere, and they made so many towns, and now nearly all of those towns have some kind of dollar store or Walmart and gas station out at the edge of it, and then the town center itself is all boarded up. And I mean, you can drive for hours and hours, and every single town is like this. So I don't know. I don't actually know the history of Texas itself, why so many people settled across the land out there. But it didn't last long by any means.
Yeah, I suppose it was different reasons at different times, probably ranching, livestock at one point, but then they started to find that oil, which is touched on in this film. You go out and you dig up these oil wells and make a profit off of that. But once the wells run dry, it's like you describe. It's a city without a purpose. Those people who followed out there to go support these new oil barons, now they're just stuck out there. basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like they've gotten way better with the technology on those plants, so they don't need as much manpower and all sorts of things. Yeah, yeah, it's a strange place because like I've been also you and I did a road trip once through like the West, Utah and Arizona and stuff like that, and that feels more appropriate because the towns are more there's more space in between them. And so when you get to a town, it's not necessarily doing bad because it's like the only thing around. So it serves the people there. But yeah, there's just too many towns, really. So like this, the town that's featured in this, it truly is one of many and arguably way too many. So that's why there's like, it's weird because you can like, there's actually tons of people out there, but they're all kind of separate from each other and they all try to like own the town and there's these like hierarchies that exist, I'm sure.
Yeah. And these were, I think, in most cases, people who wanted to get away for one reason or another. So they're not really taking a lot of traditions with them. Mm-hmm. I read a little bit of the Pauline Kael review of this, and she kind of touches on that too, of just like these are communities without tradition. People who kind of don't know how to connect to each other. They don't know how to teach these kids about how to live or sex education or anything. That really contributes, I think, that these are like communities without like some connection to a shared past,
Mm-hmm.
But they're such young communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there really feels like as misguided and, well, not necessarily misguided, but as broken and as short-sighted and conservative, you could say, as the people who founded all that area were, there was at least the side of discipline and the side of find something in your life to do and just do that and focus on that and work hard and that type of thing. Obviously, that has all of its problems, but at least there was that for some time. And that has completely, in this film, it's obviously shining a light on how there's no good role models. And the one that there is, Sam or something.
Yeah.
No, Sam's the kid.
No, Sonny's the kid. Yeah, it's Sam the lion, they call him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of the only guy that's good in a sense, and he dies. So that's symbolic, at least to me, of what this place looks like. Yeah, there was a mix of good guys out there in the West, and the Westerns have always had that as a trope. Like there's always a good guy somehow, and he's got to make his way. He's got to do some bad things out there where everything's bad, just to be good. And but these days, not even that's to be found potentially.
Yeah. You're left with the rich people and their rich kids, their aimless sort of like no direction, no moral compass, rich kids.
Yeah, just and also like where do they head to? Wichita? Is that the city that they end up going to?
Yeah, for like the pool party, I guess.
No, I mean at the end when
she
after she's taken away by her parents and they're gonna head to some city. Was it Wichita or was it like Dallas or something?
I don't know. They crossed over into Oklahoma, right?
Yeah. Right. But then her parents move. They move to some city.
Oh yeah. I think they say she went to school in Dallas.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Yeah. But that is the way it is. You either stay in that town and it feels very much like a dead end, or you move to a city. And that seems to have been the trajectory for decades.
There's that scene near the end where Sonny is just really beat up about I forget what it is. It must be after he comes back and visits the coach's wife. And she says, like, you can't just come back here. Like, you dropped me. You totally just discarded me, and she blows up at him. But I think it must be after that. He just gets in the truck and starts driving out.
Oh, so what happens is he goes and says goodbye. He's going to say goodbye to his friend, who's going to be headed off to the Korean War. And that's the first time they've talked since they got in a little fight over the girl everyone wanted. So he says goodbye to him, and then they talk about her. And he was like, "Did you ever get a chance to get to the hotel or the motel or whatever on the wedding night?" And he's like, "No, I never did." And I think it gets him thinking about her and the possibility of going and seeing her. So he gets in the truck after that. And in between that time, too, Sam gets run over, and he's very upset about that. So after that, he gets in the truck and drives. And you can assume he's driving towards Dallas to go try to find this girl.
Billy gets run over.
Yeah, Billy.
That's played by Sam Bottoms.
That's
confusing.
But, yeah. But so then he's driving towards what you assume is Dallas. He stops at some point and turns around, and who he comes back to is that older woman who he was with. Yeah. So it's like, a sense of like, he had been dreaming of this girl his whole life, making his way through, almost gets her. He practically has her, and you think, oh, this is it. They've succeeded, but they're still just kids, really. And so, so he comes the reality. He's confronted with the reality, and then I love how, even though they're confronted with the reality, they also repress a certain other aspect of reality, which is that relationship is not a good one, but they go along because they don't know what else they can do, and they feel helpless. So,
well, that's an interesting read. I wasn't even thinking that he was going to go after JC when he's driving off. I just thought of it as like he doesn't have a destination. After Billy's killed in that accident, it's like everything that I cared about in this town is like gone. It's hollowed out, and I just have to get out. I don't even think of him as like having a place to go in mind, and that's to my mind why he stops and turns around, because he doesn't. There's an unknown out there. He doesn't know where he's going. So he just gets scared of that and goes back to what he knows, which feels very real. Like that's kind of the explanation behind all of these lives. It's like it's a risk. It's frightening to strike it out and go try to leave, so they all just kind of stay stuck where they're at.
Yeah, whether or not he's chasing after this girl that he feels like he could still have a chance with, or he's just heading out into the unknown. The woman who's older than him, who he doesn't feel completely desirous of, is still safer than any other possibility. And the town itself, she embodying the old ways, I suppose.
Yeah. And that's a really good performance. The coach's wife, Ruth, played by Cloris Leachman, she won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for this.
Wow.
She and Ellen Burstyn as JC's mom both got nominated, along with Ben Johnson as Sam the Lion. But yeah, it's just every second that she's on screen, it's you feel the sorrow, the total dejected emptiness of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how much all these adults kind of cling to the children, the teenagers, and the kind of promise that they have, because their lives are such dead ends. I love at the start where every single person that sees Sonny and Dwayne in that first morning, or they're all talking about the football. Why don't you kids learn how to tackle? It's like, why do you all care so much about high school football? Like, your lives are really that boring that's your biggest concern, and you're gonna berate these kids when you see them.
It's very Texas to have that be your life. That is another prophetic sort of straight line that never curved there out there in Texas and the South, where it truly is most people's lives, is how the football players are doing in high school and if they'll get to a college and how well they'll do there. That's about it. I don't. It really is it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to Texas. I mean, that's one thing it gets right. The fact that it's partly autobiographical is you get the sense that that's the case, because it is quite accurate for what I know of Texas and what my experience has been going there. I mean, at one point they're singing like a Texan anthem in the high school, sort of like a Pledge of Allegiance, and they do that actually still too. They'll do a Pledge of Allegiance to the United States, and they do one to Texas. That's how that's how much they care about that.
Yeah.
But all the while, so what this film does is it shows you all of that, all of the traditional elements and what people care about, and all the while, it isn't going to shy away from the habits people actually have, which is thinking about sex, having sex in ways in which are probably questionable. There's a lot of darkness there. It's not going to shy away from that. It's going to be like, hey, this is actually the underbelly of America, and a lot of what all you, so-called Texan Christians might actually be doing, and trying to find your way through this youth and everything. And this is what it is. This is reality.
Yeah. And this is probably a good time to mention Bogdanovich's wife at the time, Polly Platt, who's credited as the production designer on this. She was the one who first read the novel and said to Bogdanovich, like, you really need to consider making this into a film. And she really identified with the story of the high school girls and the way that it depicts these awkward, unfulfilling sexual encounters, which you didn't see in movies, really. So that's probably one of the things that, you take away from this film the most is it probably felt really radical to see this stuff depicted in a movie so realistically. It's something that I feel like we're much more used to in our films now, but this was still really new, especially, just a couple of years after the Hays Code had been lifted. So that's, I think she kind of was making sure that stuff was translated into this film. I mean, she was a really close collaborator with her husband from the beginning. And the series that the podcast You Must Remember This by Karina Longworth did on Polly Platt is really good, talking about how important she was to this film and the next two films that Bogdanovich would make, and how unsung she was just because, this was the time of auteur theory, and, the man who directed the film was the author, the most important person, Meanwhile, though, she's behind the scenes. She did so many jobs on this film that went uncredited. It was kind of crazy. She was doing the makeup for the actors. She was designing sets. She was, helping with direction, conferring, drawing out diagrams for her and Peter to go over and figure out how they were going to shoot it. She was very much, a co-author on this film, and that kind of went unspoken for a long time while Bogdanovich became, one of these new big name directors. But the stuff about the sexuality in this is pretty incredible, and especially for the time that this comes out.
Yeah, that's amazing. You'll have to check that out. But the nudity, for one thing, and just the behavior that teens have, and there isn't any, even long after this too, Footloose and stuff like that. Teen behavior was sort of showcased, and then it was the adults themselves were don't do that. So they were like trying to monitor it, trying to have some sense of control over it. And here, you're right. It really what's true to say, and what you were saying there is like the adults don't even care about what they're doing. Really, the kids, they only care about a few specific things, and one of them is football. Whether or not they're like going off and having sex or going to these parties, like they don't seem to really mind or care. To the point where an older woman, crosses a boundary with a younger boy, and so it's like really the morals here have been practically erased, and nobody really knows what they're doing, and they're just trying to survive and have a good time.
Yeah. There's that early scene where JC and her mom talk about, if she's had sex with Dwayne yet.
Yeah.
I hope, I just wouldn't want you to get married to him, maybe if you had sex, you'd realize he's not all that. Incredibly, interesting depiction of, this frank mother-daughter relationship. Like, even JC doesn't really know what to do. She's like probably feigning a little bit of like surprise at her mother and being like, no, I would never do that. That's against our religion, to have sex before marriage. But it's a crazy time too, because like all these women had kids super young then, so they're not that old, when their kids are becoming teenagers, becoming the age when they get sexually active. And in a lot of ways, like, these adult characters feel like, teenagers who have just, their bodies have gotten a little older, but they still think and act in those ways. And it's not crazy to have that kind of conversation with your daughter,
Right. And there's like I've met people that are in a kind of culture that is similar to this or to what you're describing, where you have kids young, and so by the time they're a certain age, you haven't been able to experience enough in your own life, and partly because of where you are living, like the it might be class or things like that, and so you just don't have the experience or the understanding or education to tell your kid what is actually really important and useful for them to know to grow up and to have education themselves, things like that. And it sort of becomes this this kind of cycle, this sort of self-enclosed cycle, and it's sad to see. These parents, they don't know anything else. They only know what they've experienced, so they're going to tell their kids basically what they've experienced from the best they can. And it doesn't work out well. It doesn't work out well a lot of times. And so you end up seeing that a lot of times the best thing for anyone in this case to do is to move out and move to a place with more, resources or possibility.
Yeah, go follow a job like Dwayne ends up doing or something.
Go to the army.
Yeah. I wonder if our grandfather ever saw this. I mean, I feel like it would have hit close to home, since he was of that age, went over to Korea, and it feels really real. Yeah. I will say, watching this, like, I didn't really emotionally connect to that. I can't speak to why that is. Yeah, I don't know. But maybe that'll change when I have a chance to rewatch it. But I do really admire what the film is doing, but it did not really hit me at all, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I know what you mean. For me, I think I didn't relate to like the characters specifically, or anything like that. But I did feel they reminded me of something about youth and growing up as a boy, and definitely having friends that were more like these boys maybe, and sort of seeing that from the side a bit, and just what it was like growing up and not knowing, not knowing what I wanted really, and trying to figure out what I wanted, and just how to get along and how to be normal, so to speak. I appreciated in this movie there's several little instances where Sonny will like kind of glance at just something that's happening. And it reminded me of something that a lot of movies do these days too. One example would be when he's in class and he sort of looks out the class and there's like these dogs in the yard and they are one of them's trying to get with the other one. And he just sort of glances at that and notices it. And other times it'll just be sort of a quiet moment, just sort of noticing the wind or something like that. That felt very real, felt very like that opened up for me more of who he was. He really is a kind of a listener and a person who, despite all of the craziness around him, is trying to be good and trying to, be true to himself, which seems like he, as a character has a good heart and wants goodness for people. He you can tell he kind of feels bad even when he's with that older woman and what he's doing. He doesn't like that he's doing that. But again, he's being pulled by different desires and trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, he's definitely like an empathetic person, it feels like, but he doesn't kind of know how to handle that. It's so uncomfortable in that first encounter with the older woman.
Yeah.
That he just like has to leave. He's definitely feeling how miserable she is, and he doesn't know how to react to that, and he just has to try to be like polite, but like excuse himself from that situation, I think, because it is he actually feels it, he actually recognizes what's going on with her.
Yeah, which in that sense, that is the thing that's like way more sad, is that he's with this woman partly because it's like he's coming of age and is exploring, and so she wants him, but the reason why she wants him is because she has low self-worth and feels lacking, and then he later will have a chance with this girl that he's been fancying for a long time. And she's gone through her own path, her own, coming of age story too, to get to a point where she sort of feels like, oh, why haven't I just been looking for Sonny and wanting to be with Sonny? This guy, he's actually the kid that like makes the most sense. And so now you get to this point where like both of them have kind of gone through this exploration to get to a point where they're like they're fine with each other and they're fine with themselves. To some extent, right? They're not seeking so much as they were. They're not seeking from a place of lacking. Like they've now both had sex. They know what that's like. So they're just like, let's be together. And there's this like happiness suddenly. They're driving off in their wedding gowns, wherever they got those from in this small town. And they're like happy. And there's this moment of like fleeting bliss. For a moment, there is no lacking and there's no worry about who they are, what they'll be, and anything like that. And then it's all pulled out from under them, of course.
Yeah. Now, I do agree, when her mom brings it up, JC does seem to respond to this idea of, oh, I could be with Sonny, like, I actually would like that. But it seems like she gets pulled more towards this thrill of, what would be fun is actually if our parents chased us, and I left a note so that they knew where to come get us. And if everyone knew that we had run off and got married, if it became something everyone talked about in town, that seems to kind of throw a wrench in any possibility of happiness for her, and we don't really see the aftermath of where that leaves her. She kind of exits the movie and goes off to college at that point. But it does seem like she's become conditioned at that point to respond to the thrill of things, to everyone being interested in her because she's this beautiful young woman and everyone caring about what she does. And she's not really thinking about how, what's going to make her happy. That comes secondary. So that seems to be what keeps that from being a real possibility for them.
Right, and he still has an anxiety in response to her thrill seeking. So yeah, you can only imagine if that was drawn out further, it definitely wouldn't have worked. It is at the very least just a fleeting moment of happiness compared to what they've been dealing with for the rest of the film, generally speaking. But you're right, it wouldn't have worked out, if you had drawn a line into the future there. But cinematically, I think what it's doing is fantastic because you have this novel that they adapt into a screenplay that is like, this guy somehow was able to write novels that like really spoke to people, especially in the West and in America and those types of environments. And with HUD, same kind of thing. I mean, they show a decent amount. They get really dark. Newman's character is obviously very gray and like harsh. He's not like a super lovable character by all means, but he's an interesting one for sure. And so here, it's amazing that they show as much as they possibly can, if not more. I mean, it's very surprising how much they show, given like what you said, it's only been 2 or 3 years since the Hays Code's been lifted. There's a lot of times, even today, when a story can be adapted into a screenplay, and then during the shooting or the editing or whatever, they end up leaving out all of these really intriguing shots, like that otherwise would have been imagined by the story itself. So, I mean, obviously, one case here is the pool, where they show all these kids naked, and they keep showing it for a while. I felt almost French New Wave to some degree. Like they kept showing it, and then she gets on the diving board, and she's slowly taking off her clothes. This is like a New Wave type film. I know this is New Hollywood, but you would not have seen anything like this on the big screen, even a few years prior.
Yeah, it really feels trailblazing, like we've had films, in these couple of years post Hays Code where they are, showing more nudity, more sex scenes and stuff. But this is a very dramatically serious film that wants to also incorporate that stuff. So that feels very new for sure. Yeah, you don't you see a lot more sex and a lot more of the awkwardness, the realness of it. Like that film, Don't Look Now, gets credited as having one of the first, really interesting, explicit, realistic sex scenes. But that's 2 years after this that you're seeing this stuff in an American film at this time is pretty crazy. And that does seem to be a big part of why it was so universally acclaimed at this moment.
Mm. Yeah, it is black and white. I don't know, that doesn't downplay the feeling that you get from watching it, but I appreciate that it's black and white.
It kind of makes it feel like it's less lurid, less salacious, the sex, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And it really puts you in the place and time that it's, showcasing the 50s. And I also think when you, like a period piece, sometimes you can get away with a little bit more because you're like, it's kind of fun to imagine finally what it would have been like, or what in some sense what the movies were always leaving out,
Yeah.
And so it's like sort of like, to shoot a movie, from the 40s, 50s now, you'd hope they do something like this because you can watch like a Hitchcock or, some other film from then and, they come together and kiss and then suddenly it cuts to like the next day and you're like, wow, there's no character building, no experience there for you to like fall into more. And I know that these days I've been hearing seeing these articles and I've been hearing about how the young kids are not enjoying intimacy on film as much as the as much as people did in the past. One argument is that that's just not done as well these days, is one argument. Or, I don't know what's going on there. And you can also have the argument of like if it's necessary or not. But with this film, I feel like because it's coming of age and all these characters, like the events that take place in these characters' lives in terms of, the people they meet and fall in love with and everything, I feel like it's important. I feel like it's the experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I do. I can understand that kind of Gen Z feeling. I am very aware of like the man behind the camera when we're staring at Cybill Sheperd's character, like taking her clothes off in this film. I can understand where you kind of can't get that out of your head when you're watching this, just because that was the case in so many films. So many of these are directed by men. So again and again, it's the women getting naked and being sexualized. And in this film, that's really used well to let you kind of feel the experience for these young girls, for sure. But at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, Peter Bogdanovich and Cybill Sheperd did have an affair during the production of this film and got together. And Bogdanovich and Polly Platt got divorced during like the post-production. So it's like, yeah. It's like that you kind of feel that like she's obviously perfect for the role of like the young, beautiful high schooler that everyone adores, but you feel the director adoring her as well, and that was like true to what was going on in real life. So, sometimes when you're thinking about those things, you do get a little turned off by the film. So I'm pro, sex and nudity in films. Like, I think that Gen Z preference does lead to a little too much puritanism and kind of policing of films, but there's something a little gross about what's happening in this film. Yeah.
Yeah. You could look at this is the argument for potentially, again, it's, rhetorical to some degree, but the argument that the art itself will always transcend the artist, because if it's really good art, which is to say that the artists themselves for sure has not even that much of an understanding of, because it transcends that just to that extent, then what you could often see throughout all of history is something super beautiful being said, something very true being said, and yet the artists themselves don't live by that beauty which they've created. So in some sense, the artist needs the art more than anybody else. Yeah.
No, I think it's in a lot of cases, I think. Yeah, the artists are trying to reach for the ideal that they are depicting in the art, and that they cannot possibly reach because we are so flawed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, in some sense, you can, if you took anything away from this in terms of like a lesson to learn, I suppose, which I don't think I've ever said about any of the movies we've done, but if there was any lesson to gain here, it is dealing with what you may be repressing, because that's how it ends. The fact that he goes back to that woman and she's kind of like, why did you come here? You should be apologizing to me. And then I think she says like, you should just go, and all these things. And he just holds his hand out, and they kind of agree to go along without really talking about anything any further. There's such a high degree of repression that's happening there. And I feel like that's something that occurs a lot in life, obviously, is when something feels too great and too hard to deal with, you repress. And then look at what happens. You're just describing this director and kind of having an affair. Therein is like, the director himself must have been repressing something in order to keep some emotional baggage or trauma down that he had experienced. And now it all bubbles up to the surface. And he does this thing, because he didn't deal with the repression, whatever it was, He couldn't be honest with himself, couldn't be honest with the people around him.
Yeah.
So,
no, yeah.
So
you get
don't
repress,
damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. This a film like this is really an attempt to start the conversation of like, let's recognize this repression in each other and let's try to move past that, let's understand how this is all negatively affecting all of us, And yeah, it transcends the artist, because even as this guy is doing this horrible thing to his wife, it's, he's able to make something that so many people are going to be able to watch and respond to and start to think about, like, how they can change things in their own lives and talk to the people in their lives and stuff. That's a pretty incredible thing that you can achieve in some way with art, with a film. Right, because in some sense, you're either going to talk about a film like this honestly, like you're either going to talk about a film honestly or not. And then a film like this, if you talk about it honestly, you're going to be discussing what it's like to grow up and have desires as a kid and what you went through, and then now what you're repressing based on that and all sorts of stuff. Or you're going to just keep repressing. Is it going to be one or the other? You're going to be like, yeah, I thought it was weird. I don't know. It was strange. And then there you go, repressing still. That is for sure another path many people back then, I'm sure, took. They walked out of the theater and said, I'm never thinking about that movie ever again. Not because they actually thought it was bad. It's probably because it touched a nerve, and then they still didn't want to deal with the stuff. Yeah, but artists are going to try to reach out to those people. Yeah. You never know when it'll happen, when it'll actually break through. Yeah, exactly. Boy, we haven't said Jeff Bridges' name. It's almost too obvious of a name. I know to mention. Yeah, he's just incredible right off the bat here. Like, he's great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, could we? So Jeff Bridges is so great all throughout. The character that he plays, he's gonna make love with his girlfriend for the first time, and it doesn't work out. He's not sure what the hell's going on. What's going on there? Is he just nervous? Is he actually not attracted? Do we have any thoughts about what happened there? I just kind of imagine that he's putting all the pressure on himself. Mm-hmm. He really expects that because he has the prettiest girl in school that he has to be, the perfect lover. And doesn't even know what that looks like. No, no. And that's just too much pressure, and that's gonna get to you. And then as soon as you're not performing, that messes with your head even more. Right. Yeah, just the way that these expectations about how these situations are supposed to happen, they kind of mess with your head so much. Yeah, that's right. Again, I can't say it enough, really. It's just more of, life experience that's difficult. You don't know what to do with it. And you constantly have a choice to make. And that is either to confront the weirdness of it, the awkwardness of it, the strange uncertainty about it. You have to confront it, whatever happened. Because if you don't, it's just going to add to the already existing pool of, lack of self-worth and whatever else is down there, and aggression and anger and sadness and all that stuff. Yeah. But this film really captures the feeling of that time marching on, and that feeling that like you've lost an opportunity, that the good times passed you by, or they weren't even that good, and now you're in the worst time somehow. But yeah, just the way that events happen, like Sam's death, they run off to Mexico and come back, and some random old guy just tells them, oh yeah, Sam died. Yeah.
He was a good guy. Yeah.
It's just like, you never know when these things are going to end, when things are going to be forever changed. And it's so bittersweet. It really gets at that feeling, in this film.
Yeah. It's a very bittersweet film. And I was kind of thinking this will be an interesting, and out of just pure expectation, I had no idea what to really think. But I was thinking from the trailer and from the very little I knew about it, is this really a film we can have much to say about and much to talk about? But pretty soon, pretty early on, a quarter of the way in or something, already so much happens. You're only like a quarter of the way in, and it's like all these dramas have been unfolding in these characters' lives, and it really does a good job stretching that time out, like you said, like pacing itself over the course of like a year in high school or whatever it is, and yet always kind of slicing in like important moments that are kind of gray and dark and awkward, and somehow there's a lot going on here in what would have seemed just like a simple movie. There's actually a lot going on.
Yeah. It's really well done because it doesn't have to hold your hand and be like, okay, now 5 months have passed and it's now spring and this is what's going on. Like it's really subtle with that stuff, and it just focuses on what's going on within the scenes and what's important with what's happening with the characters. And there are only a few spots where that felt weird and it threw me off. Like JC goes to the pool party and then we don't see her for a couple scenes, and like the relationship with Sonny and the coach's wife is like developing over the course of multiple scenes. And then it cuts to JC at the house where the pool party is, and it feels like it's that same night, even though it feels like at least weeks have passed with what's going on with Sonny. So that felt like weird. Like, are we actually jumping back in time, or has she just been hanging out at this house for multiple occasions over this span of time? Little weird stuff like that here and there, but otherwise it's really, really well paced and edited.
Yeah, it's well paced, well edited. The cinematography is it's just good. It's just solid. It's not like amazing, but it does what it needs to do. And it somehow feels like a Hollywood movie and at the same time a lower budget film, which is always fun.
New Wave was good to call out because, like Godard and Truffaut, like Bogdanovich was obsessed with those golden Hollywood era films. So he's really making sure to emulate that in how this is shot and how it looks, even though the content is sort of updated for the current moment. He has really studied that stuff and how to effectively get this story across visually.
Yeah, you can tell. It often feels more like a film from the 50s in a fun way. Yeah. You can still go to the cinema that they show in that town. Somebody restored it, and they'll do shows there. Apparently, I looked that up, which is fun. I love to see people keeping things going, and even if it's a little touristy, it's always fun to see.
Yeah.
It's not actually the last picture, it wasn't actually the last picture show.
Yeah, that's the way of it, Yeah, it changes. It becomes a different thing, but these things, they don't literally, end forever. but it can kind of feel that way, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much talk about that these days, right? Like a lot of theaters were closed down in the pandemic and over the course of years, and a lot of people watching movies at home. So this has been a conversation people have been having for a long time, and especially of late. So it's great to see people kind of making a return to watching on the big screen.
Yeah. I'm gonna go see a damn movie tonight. I'm gonna go catch J. Kelly, since Netflix will put that in just like 25 theaters in the country or something, and I happen to live near one of those theaters. I don't want to watch that on a damn TV. I want to see it on the big screen with a crowd.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have a big screen in my house. Yeah, but it's not the same as going to see it with a crowd. You never know what you're going to experience. I went and saw Wicked, part 2, with some friends just because mostly because they loved it, and I probably wouldn't have watched it if it was just me. I'm not going to put that on personally, but it's fun to watch with a group. And then the theater itself had like a really high energy, positive group. Everyone cheered after.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. You can watch a horrible movie, like a movie that you just don't love at all, and you're just kind of like, why am I here? And yet the crowd, if it's high energy, you can go along with that. So
a lot of people on Letterboxd, I think, they come down really harshly on films and kind of ignore the audience experience, Like if audiences are responding to the film, it's doing something right.
Right.
Really. It almost, some of these Letterboxd users, it sometimes feels like they just like, they're pretending that no one's there with them, and they're just like deciding like, no, obviously this doesn't work, it's made so poorly, so blah, 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 blah. And it's like, everyone around you was into it, was having a good time, Yeah, I'm sure there's some cases where that's, you're going to feel like, you might be like, am I crazy? This might not be a good movie, but everyone seems to be loving it. But yeah, most of the time it's generally better to just kind of try to find out what that crowd is liking about it. Be interested and curious about what's making these people enjoy it. Yeah. Anything else to say?
No, nothing I can think of. I really do. I really enjoyed it. Go to a theater if it's showing. They should remaster it. I don't know if they should remaster.
Oh, one thing I was gonna mention was the definitive version, the version that we both probably watched now, is this director's cut that Bogdanovich actually put out in the 90s. It added an extra 7 minutes of footage, including that sex scene in the pool hall between JC and the older man, which is interesting. Like we have a different version now than the version that came out originally. It's still, I would say it feels like it's probably largely the same. I don't think they did any crazy re-edits, just kind of mostly expanded the scenes by a few seconds here and there. But yeah, it's always interesting how these films live and change over time. Yeah,
I know. They take on they have a life of their own. Where they end up and who owns them and when they get remastered and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And if they'll be remembered. That's a whole other thing. There's probably many films, and we've talked about this before, but it's exciting to think of films that are out there, maybe on some small server ready to be downloaded or streamed somewhere, that only a small population on Letterboxd has caught wind of, and yet could be amazing. These are sort of hidden gems. I sometimes try to seek out these hidden gems because I think there are many, simply due to the fact that some of these films just didn't get the advertising or the production, or they were not well received and still haven't been rediscovered. I'm sure there's plenty of films like that. So it'd be fun to see what pops onto the scene in years to come.
That's very true. We will not be doing any rediscovering on this podcast in the near future, though. We're sticking for the next year, 1972, we're sticking to the Sight and Sound list and exploring some things that we haven't seen and some that we have. But next week will be John Waters' Pink Flamingos. Experience it. It's going to be a fun one, I think, to talk about.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And in the meantime, go to unauthorizedpod.com to find our letterboxes and maybe some writing as well in the future, some longer form pieces.
That's right. And stay tuned to a project that we both worked on that will be releasing soon. We'll give more details about that in the coming episodes. But Last Picture Show, totally unauthorized. Until next time.
Till next time. Peace.
Peace.